Okay, I want to talk about doing a raised panel here. This is for the clock door. Now you need to understand that a raised panel actually has three components to it. It has the flat here that fits into the groove. It has the raise, and then it has what's called the field. And because this area here has to fit in the groove, it's most critical, so we're going to run the cutter above the table. And for what we're doing here, because we're doing a cope and stick, this distance needs to be 3/8 of an inch. 3/8 of an inch there. Now this is our basic cutter assembly. I'm going to take it off backwards. You can sort of see the progression that we're going to go here. Now we're going to start off putting two narrow diameter spacers on here. The reason we're putting these small diameter spacers on here is we're going to be putting a fixture on it that needs to get pretty close to the spindle. So that's why we want the small diameter there. Then we're putting our cutter, this is the Freeborn Tantung cutter, over that. We're going to put another narrow spacer on, and then just for the sake of protection, we're going to put the shield over it. Now, once again, you need to use narrow spacers with this one, because if you use a big one, you might actually crush the plastic ring. You need to make sure that it's resting on the bearing as opposed to crushing out on the plastic. So we're going to put another narrow one on top for the same reason. When I'm pressing down, you can see that I can still spin the bearing. All right, now this is the sled that we use on here, and it has this cutout that needs to slide in, and it has this lip. And the purpose of that lip is when I'm raising my panel, this lip keeps me from dipping in. It's a very important thing. When you do this next year for the kitchen, you use a different fixture, but once again it has a strip on the bottom to keep the panel from being able to dip into the opening. Because the cutter is so wide, you need to keep the fences fairly far off, and consequently the risk of, on a narrow panel, dipping into that opening is pretty significant. So we add this lip here to prevent that from happening. So I'm going to slide this thing in, and looking through the plexi, I'm going to take my end scale and try to set that for about 3/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to run it and verify it and make an adjustment. So to attach it, and it is important to do that, I'm going to hook under this way and clamp it on both sides. That way it won't slide around. Slide my fences in as far as I can, just for safety purposes. Now on a sample piece, I just want to run this and make sure I have that flat correct. That's a little bit much, so I'm going to just loosen my clamps, slide my fixture out a little bit, retighten it, and check it again. This time I'm right at 3/8. Now that we've moved our fences forward, have our auxiliary table properly adjusted, we want to look after safety here. So I'm going to put my sample down. I've got these blocks that we mount on here. That's panel raiser, it's marked. And what we're going to do is really set it up so we're safe when we do this. We take the wide one on this side and move it just about all the way in. That prevents the work from jumping up over that lip and it virtually eliminates any possibility of getting your hand into there. And once again, when you're moving this, you should be able to slide it. It shouldn't be flopping around. You shouldn't have to be fighting it all the way across. So, with our hold down on there and everything secure, let's go ahead and raise the panel. Now that looks like a good first pass. This will probably be a 3-pass process. This is a push stick that we use to help get it through. Again, this is only my test piece. For doing the real piece, you start on the end. And then just continually rotate it counterclockwise. Okay, we ran another rotation of passes and now we're going for the final one. The first time I ran it, I got this, and it's just clicking around in there. It's too loose. So I raised a little bit, and now I've got this where it's not really rattling. The piece is more or less staying in there, and that's what we're shooting for. So with that being done, we're now going to run the final piece. I'm going to run a rail over these just to make sure I have a pretty good fit. If I can put my door together and not be fighting it too much. I mean, this is a little bit resistant on some of the edges, but the reality is by the time you sand it, particularly the back, that will be taken care of. Okay, now I'm assembling this door. I just want to point something out to you. Because the panel has the raise and then the field, I don't like that transition being shown in the actual door itself. So you can see how these are flush here. What we will do on the actual door after this dry fit, before we finally glue it up, is we'll go to the joiner, we'll take 1/8 of an inch off of each side. We don't need to do that on the top and bottom because the top and bottom won't be expanding and contracting. But although this is flush right now, when we go to do the final assembly of the door, we'll join 1/8 inch off, once it's set, each side. But for the dry fit, we don't need to worry about that. So there we go with the nice raised panel door. And it's going to look great on the finished clock.